Hey there, this is Edward. Welcome to a longer tale than usual, one that I somehow knew would arrive right when my voice decided to betray me. I know maybe it doesn't sound like that, but I hurt in places that I didn't know I had. Call it intuition, call it a curse, but I had a feeling that I'd be getting sick right around the seasons turning. And sure enough, here we are. So, for this Christmas story, I brought reinforcements. Over the next 12 days, you will hear 12 incredible narrators, each lending their voice to a chapter of the 12 rites of Midwinter. Enough talking from me. Let me introduce you to Stephanie Betschart, reading A Partridge in a Pear Tree.
Snow had a way of muting Marrowbone Village, as though the world found the place distasteful and wished to smother it under a white, indifferent hand. The houses crouched close to one another, bowed under their own weight, their rooftops swept low with ice and age. The narrow lanes between them resembled veins more than streets, pale, rigid conduits through which the villagers moved with the solemn cadence of blood forced through a constricted heart. The bells began shortly after morning, 12 of them, cast in an alloy the elders refused to name. They tolled without beauty or melody, each note dropping like a stone into water, spreading vibrations that seemed to settle uneasily beneath the skin. The villagers emerged in silence from their crooked thresholds, bundled in woolen coats, stitched with family sigils long forgotten by the outside world. Their breaths formed brief phantoms that fled upward into the gray sky, as though ashamed of their origin. Harlan Weaver walked slower than the others, but no one hurried him. Age had stolen much from him, his run, his strength, his unbroken sleep, but it had granted him a kind of unnerving gravity, a weight of lived experience that made his presence more compelling than the bells themselves. His beard, thick and iron gray, clung to his face like frostbitten moss. His eyes were small and deeply set, their dark pupils swimming in rheumy whites, but they were steady and deliberate, as though he never looked at anything he had not measured first. He paused beside the gallows pear tree. The tree rose in the exact center of the village square, its trunk swollen and fissured, the bark stippled with old nails and scrapes of winter cloth. Its branches arced up like crooked antlers, each limb ending in a barren point that speared the ashen sky. No fruit had grown there in decades. The tree had renounced its original purpose long before most of the villagers were born. It had another purpose now. Harlan brushed his gloved fingers along the trunk, feeling the familiarity of its cold wood, the slight tremor of something restless beneath. He wondered if the others felt it too, or if the years had simply made him sensitive to things that preferred to remain unnoticed. When he drew his hand back, he saw the faint outline of an old scar on his palm, a jagged line shaped uncannily like a branch. It had been there since he was 18, the year he served as Partridge. Harlan adjusted his scarf and turned as the procession approached. The wicker effigy, crafted with exacting care by the Woodwrights, was carried by 4 villagers. It was shaped loosely like human elongated limbs, a narrow torso, head bowed forward in a gesture that could have been reverence or resignation. The wicker was stained a deep umber from years of ritual oils, its joints reinforced with thin metal bands. A faint rattling came from inside, as though something were unsettled by its pending roll. Behind it followed the cages, dozens of them. Each one contained a cluster of blackbirds, their feathers dull as coal dust, their eyes glinting with an almost feverish brilliance. They rattled the thin bars as they passed, beaks tapping like wind-tossed branches. They had been starved for a day and a night in preparation. The ritual demanded hunger. The villagers formed a tight circle around the pear tree, and the snow beneath their boots surrendered with soft, reluctant groans. No one spoke. Words had an unfortunate way of attracting attention, especially on the first day. Instead, they communicated with their eyes, brief nods, and the slightest shifts of their posture. The eldest among them lit a thurible of resin and herbs, its smoke curling through the cold air like a pale serpent seeking entry into a warmer world. Harlan inhaled the scent, astringent, metallic, and layered with something faintly reminiscent of old earth pulled freshly from the roots of a graveyard tree. He felt the village's eyes upon him. He stepped forward, leaning lightly on his cane, and cleared his throat.
"Today begins the work again,"
he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone addressing both the living and the dead.
"The first barrier, the first binding, the first turning away."
The circle bowed their heads. Harlan continued.
"Before there was Marrowbone, before there was the church or the boundary stones, or even the river, there was him, Skell Marok, the slumbering crown. The hunger rooted beneath the world, the antlers that scrape the underside of our reality. Each year we coaxed his gaze downward. Each year we thickened the veil, and each year, the Partridge is the first to bleed for our safety."
He let the words settle. The snow absorbed their echo. A soft voice broke the quiet. "I'm ready." Elsbeth Rowan stepped from the crowd. 19, slight of frame, her face composed with unnatural calm. Her cheeks were wind-bitten, her dark hair bound in a single braid that fell along her shoulder like a line of ink. Her eyes were the part that unsettled Harlan. Steady, unwavering, withholding something he doubted she wished to confess. Her mother had died last winter, day 7, the Swans. A death without ceremony, for ceremony was never permitted on the 7th day. The ritual demanded silence from the living and fierce noise from the swans. The mother had borne that noise until her mind could no longer contain it. Elsbeth had not spoken of it since. Harlan approached her, lowering his voice so only she could hear.
"You understand what is expected?"
She nodded. I was raised to understand.
"And you understand the pain?"
Enough. Her hands were shaking, though she held them behind her back, as if to deny them the dignity of being acknowledged. Did it hurt, truly? She whispered. Harlan felt the old, familiar pang rise in his chest, the memory of darkness, feathers, and something frenzied scraping along his ribs. He remembered the silence that followed, the sense of being suspended in a place that neither welcomed nor rejected him. It had hurt in a way that seemed to rearrange his understanding of pain forever. But he looked into Elsbeth's eyes and lied gently.
"Only the first moment."
She nodded again, and it was clear she wished to believe him. The villagers opened the back of the effigy. It shuddered as though aware of its purpose. Elsbeth stepped inside without hesitation, lowering herself into the wicker cradle. Her breath condensed around her like a hesitant fog. The Woodwrights began sewing the effigy closed, threading thick cord through the interlocking limbs until only a thin opening remained at the top. The ritual master approached the cages. One by one, he tipped them into the effigy through the remaining aperture. The birds fluttered, collided, and scrambled within the confined space, their claws scraping the wicker, their wings thrashing against Elsbeth's skin. Her breath hitched, but she did not cry out. The last cage was emptied, and the opening was stitched shut. They hoisted the effigy upward. The ropes groaned, the pulleys creaked, and the wicker figure swayed as it ascended, the birds inside twisting in agitation. The villagers guided it carefully to the lowest branch of the pear tree, securing it with practiced hands. The effigy hung there in the gathering cold, turning slightly with the wind, its occupant utterly still save for the trembling rise and fall of her chest. Harlan watched her face, or the suggestion of it through the wicker weave, and tightened his grip on his cane.
"The partridge is in place,"
he atoned. The villagers retreated into a wider circle, leaving Harlan standing closest to the tree. He was always closest. It was both his responsibility and his penance. As the last rays of daylight thinned into a bruised twilight, a hush settled across the square. Even the birds within grew quieter, their movements slowing, the sound deepening into a soft, unsettling rustling. Midnight approached with the lethargy of dripping tar. The air thickened. The snow held itself aloft, refusing to fall, as though waiting to see what would happen. And then, silence. The kind that feels like the world drawing breath. The birds stopped moving, all of them, instantly. Their stillness radiated outward, infecting the branches, the ropes, even Elsbeth's shallow breathing. The pear tree shivered. Its branches bent not down, not up, but inward, curling toward the effigy in a gesture that made Harlan's skin tighten along his neck. The ground beneath the tree tremored faintly, as though something large shifted deep within the soil. Harlan lifted his eyes. The sky had taken on an unfamiliar texture, like stretched hide. The stars dimmed. And then he saw it. A star that was not a star. A small circular vacancy, black, inhumanly black opening in the sky like a puncture. No light emanated. No glow rimmed its edge. It was simply absence torn into the firmament. He murmured a name he had not meant to speak.
Skelmarog.
The void flickered. Elsbeth convulsed inside the effigy, the birds erupting all at once in a frantic thrashing. The wicker strained, ropes creaked, and Harlan stepped forward, whispering urgently.
"Hold fast, child. Hold fast. Hold fast."
Her muffled breath broke into a strained, keening gasp, but she did not scream. The pear tree drew taut, every branch stretched as though pulled by subterranean hands. And then suddenly, it relaxed. The void in the sky shuddered, collapsed inward, and vanished. Wind returned, soft and unwilling. Snow resumed, descending with the weary resignation of something forced back into motion. The birds quieted. Elsbeth's struggles faded. She went still, not dead, but fainted, her pulse faint against the wicker that held her. Harlan exhaled for the first time in what felt like minutes. The villagers dispersed one by one, leaving him to oversee the lowering of the effigy, the opening of the wicker, the slow extraction of a traumatized but living partridge. She would bear scars. She would sleep poorly, but she had succeeded. Harlan walked home through the pale hush of the snow, leaning heavily on his cane. The bells had ceased, leaving the night to its own uneasy quiet. He paused at his door, looked up once more at the sky, and felt his breath knot in his throat. The void was gone, but where it had appeared, a smaller, fainter star glimmered. A wrong star. A misplaced speck of light that had no business being there. It pulsed once. Harlan whispered to himself, voice sinking into the snowbound night.
I served as Partridge once, and the sky stayed dark that year. But now, the dark has begun to shine.
He shut the door behind him, but sleep refused him. Somewhere beneath Marrowbone Village, something enormous shifted in its slumber and pressed a little closer to waking.